Dana, welcome to Let's Talk Quality, the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Great to see you.
Thanks. Great to see you as well. Thanks for joining. Give the listeners a very quick overview of who you are, what you do now.
Sure thing. Been working in the quality sphere for a few decades now. As a quality leader, currently been working as a consultant, supporting other organizations with their efforts in quality.
Awesome. Right. But there's a fair bit, we're going to talk about a fair bit today, Dana, and a lot of it is going to sort of center around your life in general. So it's maybe a slightly different conversation to a lot of the normal episodes that we have on here, and I'm sure the reasons for that we'll get into. But I guess let's take it back then to sort of your earlier career. When we first spoke, you spoke very openly, and I think you've been quite open on platforms like LinkedIn about your personal life and the challenges that you've faced in your family. Taking it back to your sort of early life, how did your early days in your life sort of, I suppose, shape your career, shape your leadership career?
Sure. So as I had mentioned it in a LinkedIn post, as I'm an adult child of alcoholics. And so if anyone is familiar with that dynamic, you in that family dynamic, you don't make waves, right? Because it's not safe. And so you suppress and you go along to get along because you avoid conflict. So that was my upbringing. And so then moving into my career where I was working, I didn't ever want to make waves, right? So oftentimes wouldn't share my opinions or speak up when there was something challenging happened, because that was really fearful, because it didn't feel, let's say, safe. So as an early manager, you can imagine when you have an employee or a challenge with someone of having to address a concern with a person was very difficult for me. And I would say, in the early days, when I was promoted to a supervisor in a laboratory at the time, you were promoted. I was very responsible, diligent, hardworking, had, qualified. And I was promoted to a supervisor role, but at that time there was no training, right? It was like, okay, well, you're really good at this, so now we'll make you the supervisor of the team, but without anything behind you to support it. So what did I do, right? I was like, okay, well, just you do the best you can with what you had, with the skills that I had, which was, I'd say it was a pretty limited toolkit that I had at the time. And so then over the years, I went through a phase where I decided I'm not going to be a people manager anymore. I don't want to. And I'm going to be an individual contributor. And so I went into auditing. And for 2 years, I was an individual contributor. And I thought, this is it. I don't have to deal with, that kind of conflict or stress. Well, what happened 2 years into that, the leadership team, they needed a manager for the auditors. And I was promoted to be manager of this team. And I was like, oh no, again, and what they saw in me, my leadership capabilities and skills that I didn't see or didn't want to, embrace at the time. Right. And so then I really started to push into that and recognizing I don't deal well with conflict. But then there was training, and the companies would then support that development efforts. And then that journey carried on. I kind of started coming into my leadership and embracing that and being in that outside that comfort zone and relearning behaviors that I'd had as a child. And then if you want me to keep going into 10 years ago, I adopted my daughter, Abigail, who has Down syndrome. And so then that really changed my whole life as far as being a fierce advocate and stepping into leading with purpose and being there for a team and really developing a team of people, and not just what does Dana need to do, but how can Dana lead and support her teammates and develop them and bring them. And so
you essentially shied away from leadership at the start of your career, or wanting to go into managerial roles because of your self-confidence.
exactly. 100%.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that was a strong reluctance to be in that space.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because you've obviously experienced as a child, you had that, and thank you for being so honest and sharing all of that.
Sure.
But I'm sure there are plenty of people that won't go into management or leadership positions because of related fears of, you know, self-confidence issues, not feeling that they can communicate or want to communicate with bigger teams and manage people essentially. What do you think holds, is it that confidence piece that holds people back?
There's surely that, and then there's that reluctance to look at yourself and to pause and identify, well, who am I, right? And what are my wants and desires? So another piece aspect of that life is you don't dream or have goals typically because they're never met. So there's promises that aren't kept, or you don't want to ask just because you're in that zone of not making waves. So then really it's coming into that self-reflection and being able to say, oh, I do want something. Or goal setting was always a challenge for me at work, right? Every year they're like, set a goal. I don't have goals. I hated setting goals. It was just very uncomfortable space for me. And then there is that part where if you can be honest with yourself and pause and do some work. I had many years, of course, of therapy to really help me, to feel the feelings, to sit with uncomfortable feelings. I had a boss once who said, "Oh, I look forward to conflict." And I was aghast. I was like, "How can you look forward to conflict?" And she says, "Oh, I look at it as an opportunity to hear someone else's perspective and to learn and maybe change my own." And my mind was like, like, oh, okay. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
just those different recognizing different perspectives and opportunity.
Yeah. So when do you think, looking back, 'cause you worked for a big organization, you worked for Novartis for a number of years, you later in your career worked for Ultragenics, leading teams. At what point do you think, can you remember where your mindset shifted? You mentioned where you had to you were forced to go into that management career. When was that? And talk to us about that sort of time of your life.
Sure. So that was I was in with Novartis and directing a team, a global
Hmm.
audit team, and we're very diverse. So I had a team. I have members in Germany, Italy, and England, and America. So it was a very unique group with different cultural backgrounds, different educations. We were all coming at it from different places. And there was a training opportunity where we had a chance to, sit together, understand how each person works, what their perspectives are, how they perceive just the world, right? So it was really for me an opportunity. I don't know that I don't put names and I don't remember, but I'm the green cheerleader. That's who I am.
Okay.
Just as a personality type, you have your type A's or whatever
Yeah.
that word, those things are, but that's my personality style. But really then I had this opportunity to recognize, oh, okay, so Lorenzo, he is a type A, red, give me the work. I'm going to go, 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 go. Right. And then I have these other teammates who are like, I need the details, the analytical people who are going to support me and do my help with my metrics and things like that. But they're like, I need an agenda and I need, this is what's going to help me. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it really helped me grow. It was a small team, but really helped me grow to recognize the different styles that people operate under. That I think I was very naive thinking, well, everybody thinks the same way that Dana thinks.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
realizing, oh, that's not
Yeah.
reality. And
Yeah.
then I could then look at, as I developed and grew in new teams, seeing, oh, okay, this person has strengths that I don't have. And that's a positive thing. So I think I mentioned to you that early in my career, I would hire people who were just like me because I feared conflict and other styles made me uncomfortable a little bit, right? So I didn't know how to interact with people whose brains weren't similar to me.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and and so that's this Novartis team that I, you know, grew. That was very different. And then that ability to and see, oh, Nick brings a unique talent here, and it's a skill set I don't have. And that really supports the whole organization. And so then from then on, it was always like, okay, realizing I can be vulnerable and recognize I don't know everything and I don't
Mm.
need to know everything.
Yep.
And I can hire people with complementary skills, and we can be an amazing force then
Yeah,
when
yeah,
having recognized that and
yeah.
and pushed it to it.
Yeah. So essentially, in your earlier career, you sort of shied away from making or hiring people that you felt were not the same sort of type personality as you, or you didn't quite maybe get on with in the interview process, because you were scared of conflict, or you wanted to avoid conflict. You opted for people towards that was more aligned to you, um, and then the effect of that meant that, or the potential opportunity cost is that you weren't building a diverse team in
Right.
your early careers. Okay, yeah,
100%. Yeah.
yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, look, the point of this podcast is to inspire future leaders in quality and get more
Right.
people combating. So I think this is a really interesting talking point, because I think a lot of people will, like I said, struggle with confidence issues. So just going back again to that transition, what were the shifts? What were the notable shifts in your development to give you that confidence to make you
Mm.
see things slightly differently, when you think back to that point?
Sure. And I'll go a little personal because at the same time I was in a very unhealthy marriage that had been 15 years in, where I'll just leave it. It was emotionally abusive. And so here I am, had a recognition where I learned nothing changes if nothing changes, and that the only person I can control is myself. And then when you can embrace that and recognize, okay, something needs to change. So I was at that midlife phase where people will talk about midlife crises. And for me, I call it a midlife awakening, where I thought, I am miserable and I'm about 40 years old. And I thought, Dana, are you going to be miserable? Are you going to stay this way for the next 40 years, potentially, our lifespan? So it was like that moment of, okay, something needs to change and I can change it. And so then on the side of the work, it was that, I was that powerlessness of recognition that no, you aren't, but you're choosing that. I was wearing that kind of as my badge of honor, my standard bearer. Well, I can't do this because blah, 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 whatever that excuse was that I had, it was really a choice then that, no, Dana, you have a choice and you can make a decision to lead your life different, to work differently, to lead differently, to, as I say, step into uncomfortable situations, to have difficult conversations with people, right? To be able to be honest. And then I found is the more I did it, the more um, confident, of course, I became and came into my own power. And I don't mean power in a negative way, but just like, oh, yeah, I could do that. And people respond to you and reflect back. And you see that they're like, oh, well, thank you for that conversation. You had a difficult conversation with me. And then that you're able to influence someone else's career
Mm,
path, their choices, help them to grow too and come along with you. So you're not leaving,
yeah,
yeah, behind.
yeah.
I don't know
Tell us, about a bit about Abby, and tell us about how her life, her journey has shaped how you approach your professional career.
for sure. So, as I mentioned, I adopted Abby at birth. She's my niece by birth, and she has Down syndrome. And I didn't know anything about Down syndrome, but I knew that I wanted her to stay in our family and that I had the the means and the love to give her what she needed, but I didn't know anything. So I go in and I'm like, "What do you do?" And immediately they tell you, "Okay, well, you need to start physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy for this infant." Like, "Well, what is that's a lot." And there's doctor's appointments to check the hearing, check the this, that, that. So that first year, I was like, it was a bit overwhelming. But I had a boss who I just said, I went on maternity leave and I said, I can't come back to the office 5 days a week. I said, because we have appointments and things. And she said, well, what do you need? And I said, well, if I could work from home 2 days a week, that would help. And this is before COVID, of course, so that wasn't common or typical. But she gave me that freedom, that flexibility that on Wednesdays I could spend 2 or 3 hours during the middle of the day to get appointments and therapies and all these things out of the way. Very helpful. But what I realized then is, everything that was going to be needed that she was on me to fight for, right? So I became a fierce advocate for her for whatever medical support she needed or therapies. There's systems here, but nobody teaches you how to navigate them and how to get through it. So you learn. Somebody will say, "Oh, do you have this service?" No, what are you talking about? So then Dana, who was always reluctant at confronting anyone or having conflict, is then calling this agency, that agency. This is what we need. That's what we want for Abigail. Going to school was a huge challenge because our system here where I live is very much where children with special needs are put into a special needs classroom. And that's not how children with Down syndrome learn best. Typically, put them in a classroom with their peers, typical peers, and they will model those behaviors and they will rise to the occasion if they're risen. So that was a big challenge for the first 3 years where she wouldn't, the schools wouldn't include her. And so fiercely fighting to get her included in a school where she's now in a Montessori school, where they were even a little unsure about bringing her in. And I said, can you give her a try? Would you please just... And so it's been 1 year that she's been in this school, and we just had our annual meeting last week. And they just said, we're so glad Abby's here. And I thought, oh, thank you, because that's what you strive for. She's 10 years old. You want her to be included and welcomed in this space. So it's been a challenge, it's been challenging and stressful and all the emotions that you have. But then we're like, okay, we're doing it. And another thing I'll just add, I was contemplating it this morning, is we talk enabling. So if I go back to my childhood, adult children of alcoholics or people who love addicts, enable them, and they enable people's bad choices and behaviors. Well, what I realized with Abby, I was enabling her too, and that I was doing her shoes for her, do whatever she was struggling with. I would be like, "Oh, let me do it for you," and we joined the Montessori school, and the Montessori methodology is very much teaching children independence. And so that if it takes you 3 or 4 minutes to hang your backpack on a hook, they let you struggle. And not struggle, but let you have the time you need. And there's not that rushing, like, okay, let's go. Everybody line up, line up. They're just like, it's time to line up. And they'll give people the grace to figure things out. So it's been very eye-opening and rewarding, and then to me to realize, I'm still a work in progress and I'm not done yet, right? I'm never finished. We're never as humans, and we always have these opportunities where we get these little signs and say, oh, okay, you need to work on that, Mom, right? Okay, back up your time to get out of the house by 5 minutes so that she has that extra time she needs to figure out, to get her shoes on herself.
Thank you for sharing
Sure.
that. And I'd imagine going through all of that has such an impact on how you show up as a leader. Were you in the mix of your leadership career throughout that whole process?
Indeed, I was.
Yeah.
So
Tell us a bit about that. Tell us about how that sort of altered your how you
Yeah,
led, how you showed up as a leader.
for sure. And that's, really this transformation time of my career and the last 6 or 7 years where I'm a fearless, like in leadership, a fearless advocate for my teams, right? Where I see injustice, where I see opportunities, I speak up. So in my, last previous role, part of the senior leadership team where I stopped, I would say finally, but able to stand up to other voices in the room, other people, whatever I felt to share my opinion. I'm an observer, so it always is a little bit, I take time, I digest things, I observe people, I observe situations, and I see, I see things. And so I used to just see things and keep quiet. And now I see things and I say, that my last organization, there were some very powerful strong personalities in the room, right? Where in my past, I would be very quiet and reserved and not share my thoughts. Whereas then now I'm like, okay, I'll speak up and I'll say what especially if I disagree, right? To say, but not in a challenging way, but have you considered, right? Or has anyone thought about this instead of that? So, really, stepping in, leading with purpose and not realizing that, life is fleeting and I don't want to be swept like in a river, just swept down the river along with the current, right? Because that's a choice. We can swim or we can just let it take us down, right? And so as I joked with you, a few weeks ago, as I'm looking towards the fourth quarter, right, of my life, right? And to really live intentionally is my goal, right? And to really be purposeful about next steps and on the work side and the personal side of my life.
Yeah. How would you change things if you were to go back to your earlier career and well, I suppose your early leadership career? When you look at
Yeah.
yourself now as a person, what characteristics would you take into your first ever role as a leader looking back?
For sure I would go with the, not fearing and stepping away from challenging conversations or discussions, right? To realize, at some point somebody said, with the challenges, they said, what's the worst that's going to happen? Right? It's not, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to, no one's going to, but it was just that reluctance. And so that would be to encourage you to say, oh, I don't know. Can you explain that to me? I had a boss once who stepped into a role where she didn't know everything, right? She wasn't an expert in one field. And she would in a meeting, she would say, I'm sorry, I don't understand that. Could you give us a little more detail? And I was like, wow, she's, that ability to be vulnerable in front of people and say, well, I don't know, or I'm not comfortable with this. Can you help me understand? Was something that I would tell a younger Dana in leadership to be like, yeah, don't be afraid to ask and to say, I don't understand, or to say, oh, what you said that really, struck me strangely. Can you explain what you meant by that? Or what was your intention, when there's conflict and things like that?
Had it not been for these, the events that have happened in your life, and your experience, not everyone is going to have that
Right.
that hardship.
Sure.
For those people that are early in their leadership career now and maybe struggling with some of those issues that you faced in your early career through no fault of their own or through no sort of experience that they've been through, it's them as an individual. How would you help them now? What would you say to them?
Hmm. I would say it's hard to say don't be not afraid, right? But that's kind of what you want to get at. And if there's someone that you can talk to and confide in, a mentor who can share wisdom and a little bit of guidance and encouragement, right? I think so much is encouraging people to take risks and to step out and help people realize, okay, well, like I said, what's the worst that can happen? Someone could say no, or they could say, not yet, but really to step into that as much as you can, because the minute you step in a little bit and you're like, oh, that was okay. It's like sticking your toe in the water And then the more you do it, the deeper you can go in. And then you can really grow from all those chances. All the chances that you take are growth opportunities, and you learn from it. And you go, oh, yeah. I read an article yesterday that somebody said, the best things that happened to me were after I was laid off X number of times, right? Because you take those experiences and you look back and you go, oh, okay, there. And I learned something, and I could do something different the next time or
Yeah, it shapes
whatever.
who you
But
are.
yeah, for sure. So I think you have a choice on how you view your circumstances, right? So you can always view them as this is horrible and drudgery and whatever, or, well, isn't this curious situation that I'm in? This is a bit uncomfortable. What can I do to influence it? Can I do anything different, or can I support somebody else here that may be in whatever this uncomfortable situation is, or my work environment is less than ideal? Because we always have the opportunity to shape the situations that we're in. And we've all worked in places where once one person starts going down that path of negativity and it can bring a whole team down, right? And then, or what's swirling around you. But if you have one person, two person say, say, well, yeah, that's disappointing, or this is really challenging. And we'll keep going as best we can. And if we can make changes, we can't. And then at a certain point, we all have choices too, right? You have a choice. You can stay or not stay. So not to be the victim,
Mm,
and to
yeah.
really own your choices and own your path would really be my encouraging words for people.
Yeah. Awesome. What you put I think this is how I initially saw you, or I saw one of your posts on LinkedIn, and it was about, it was a really open, honest post about Abby,
Yes.
a few months ago. And uh, my question is, why did you post that on LinkedIn?
I have a friend who we were chatting about careers and things, and she said to me, she's a friend and neighbor, and she said, Dana, if I see you on LinkedIn, I wouldn't know who you are. She says, no one on LinkedIn would know who you are. And I said, well, that's true, because I never saw it as a platform for that, right? But she said, well, really, let people see who Dana is versus just a list of jobs and a career, right? This is my career history, but put yourself out there, be a little vulnerable. And so I was like, I did, but it was very scary for me. Really. I was just
Yeah, I
like,
bet.
okay, hit the send button and go, you know,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
okay, I did it. And then
yeah.
there's this relief and this pride and this little bit of like, okay, you did it. And what happened? Everything's fine. Right. Um, and give
How
some
how
people insight.
how has that changed? Has that It seems such a small thing,
Yeah.
posting something on LinkedIn, but has it
Right.
changed your life or your career in any way?
It's people whom I haven't seen in a while who responded and checked in with me. And then, it's made me think, okay, well, what's next, Data? Right. And what are you going to do? And to be, put myself out there, be intentional, let people know who Dana is, what I can do as a leader for an organization, whether I'm consulting or as a full-time employee, whatever that is. It's just that, okay, you've got this. You still have, still step into it and be not compartmentalize yourself, right?
Yeah,
Work
yeah,
Dana and personal Dana. And the reality is you're one person, and we shouldn't have to compartmentalize ourselves and be like, well, no one sees this part of, who I am, right? Or that he's the Abby side of life, right?
yeah,
That part
yeah,
where
yeah.
like, well, because we all bring the entirety of ourselves to work. So, you know, we we tuck it away, but it's still there, whatever that is. So
Do you think it's important for leaders to be showing up as 100% their true, authentic self? Whether that's posting on LinkedIn or being, vulnerable within the organization. What level of
yeah,
authenticity do you think leaders should be striving for?
it's a good point. Good question. because clearly, the authenticity doesn't mean that everyone knows your all your personal life or your business. Being authentic is that your true self is there. You show who you are, your integrity, your values.
Yeah,
My core values shouldn't change from my work or my personal life, right?
yeah,
So my integrity, those things should always be there. And if I see it as people see it and they respond to it. And it's not necessarily your spoken word, it's how you show up. And people see it how you treat other people, how you run a meeting, how you do your daily work. If I say I'm going to give you something by Friday at noon and I do, then that's who I am, right? Or if I don't finish something, well then that gives, and I don't come clean. I say I'm not honest and say, "Oh gosh, I couldn't
yeah,
get to this," blah blah blah. So,
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. What you mentioned there, you about entering the fourth quarter of your life more intentionally. What does that look like to you? What does showing up intentionally um, look like for you now compared to the other chapters or quarters of your life?
sure. So, in the work world, it's really, I was like, had the thought of like, Dana, you're not done yet. So I've never sought out a head leadership of quality role because I never felt confident and didn't feel like people would see me as capable of able to do it. And so really I was like, no, Dana, this fall I had a good opportunity to have some downtime for some self-reflection that said, go try, do it. This is not the time to, you're close to retire, you have 5, 7 years, whatever, but don't dwindle it away. Right. But I have so much still to share and to learn myself that why would I don't stop now is really where I'm feeling that drive still, right?
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
energy, motivation to do it, you know.
yeah.
So,
Good for you.
because it's easy when you're consulting, sometimes it's different because you're supporting organizations and but you don't have that same connection, the people
Yeah,
connection.
yeah.
So,
Do you find that in the consulting world, you do you struggle with that lack of, well, sorry, not lack of, but
yeah,
you're going in for a specific part of a project or specific task, or and sometimes you don't see it right through to the end. Do you struggle with that kind of feeling of not getting to see the fruits of your
final
labor sometimes? Yeah, the
for
final
sure.
yeah, result.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, and you miss that, like, "Oh," and then it's gone, and you're like, "Oh, I wonder." Or
Yeah,
and also the connections with the people and the project,
yeah,
and you get it to a point, and then "Okay, thanks," and you're done,
yeah,
and you're like,
yeah,
"Oh, well, it's done."
yeah,
So, it's a positive in the using my skills in a different way and being able to step in, though, and jump in and help an organization very quickly
yeah,
with whatever that is, because oh, okay. And having been on the other side where I was the one hiring consultants to help, I have a huge appreciation and recognition of that ability and that skill set that somebody can come in and do that. So, of
yeah, yeah. Awesome. Dana, I think thank you for being
course.
so open about your story and journey and Abby's story as well. I wanted to get you on the podcast because you know you you're one of the rare people on in my network. I suppose that really you can see how authentic and real you are on LinkedIn. And I think there's a yes, there's a time and a place, or there's a certain level of honesty and vulnerability that you do and don't share. But I really think that the next generation of quality leaders really need to be working on these skills now in terms of how
Yeah.
authentic they really are.
Yep.
Because I think there's otherwise a danger of that those future quality leaders, the next generation of quality leaders being sort of few and far between them in terms of the really strong people management people leaders out there. So it's really working on those softer skills, yes, but also learning from people like yourself and your journey. to how to show up. Final question just on the quality side of things before we sort of finish, Dana. For people earlier in their quality careers, who might feel sort of pressure to feel to keep parts of themselves hidden in how they show up, what would you want them to know?
Yeah. That, why are you hiding? What's being hidden, and kind of the why, right? And then, just being a little, give yourself the grace to try show who you really are, right? And recognize that people will respond to that so much more than when you have a facade, right? Then you have that this is who I am here. But really, when you show your true self, that the world, people will respond to that and see you. And it's okay to be seen. That's, it's good to be seen. It's good to let others see who you really are.
Dana, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for sharing your story.
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed it, and it's been great getting to know you. If people want to talk to you and learn about more about you, is LinkedIn generally the best way?
Absolutely. And I'm happy you reach out, and I'll respond back, and happy to chat with anyone or whatever folks are looking for. I look forward to it.
Awesome.
And thank you,
Dana,
Hamish, for the time.
my pleasure. Best of luck for the year ahead, Dana.
Thank you so much.